Hello, this is Achyuta Ghosh, Head of Insights at nasscom, and welcome to this nasscom Insights Analyst Assemble session, where we have with us Arjun Sethi, Partner and Head of APAC region at Kearney, and together we will explore one of Kearney's flagship research products, the Global Services Location Index. Welcome to the show, Arjun.
Thank you so much, Achyuta. I really appreciate you and NASSCOM having me on the show.
Thank you. So, Arjun, we'll straight away dive deep into the product itself. Would you like to give us a brief introduction to what the Global Services Location Index GLSI is?
Absolutely. The Global Services Location Index is a country service location index. It's a preeminent piece of research that we at Kearney prepare on a biannual basis. This is its 12th edition. And what it does is it looks at the attractiveness of variety of destinations all across the globe for things like IT services, BPO operations, and such like. And it measures them across four different dimensions. The dimensions being the financial attractiveness of the location, availability of skills and talent, the overall business environment in which the location is present, and then the factor that we added about a couple of editions back called digital resonance, which is what is the digital attractiveness, digital skill base that is present in each of the locations of interest. Um, the 2023 index, Achyuta, actually includes one more factor, which we will talk about, I hope, through the course of our discussion today, and that is on talent regeneration. We have tried to look at the attractiveness of locations on the basis of their ability to create a new skill pool, especially responding to the requirements of Industry 4.0 technologies and other related requirements of the industry.
Thank you, Arjun. And I guess you said this is 12th edition, right? So, do you do this on an annual basis or every alternate year, or is there a frequency to this?
It's every alternate year. When we started way back when, about 25 years or so back, it was annual. And then gradually we moved it to a biannual cycle. So right now it is every other year.
Okay, great. So great that you touched upon the 2023, GLSI index. We'll get into that straight away, Arjun. What are key findings from the 2023 GLSI index? I mean, what kind of macro trends did you see, for example? Did you see any shifts in the rankings? You talked about talent regeneration being an important theme for the year that you introduced. Do talk a little bit on that. And of course, any trends in the countries. I mean, did you see some countries really move up significantly? So anything on those lines would be very useful, Arjun.
Absolutely, Achyuta. So some of the trends are not surprising and really impacted the way we also looked at the overall landscape. The current crisis going on within the planet and specifically across Ukraine and Russia was a key input. The fact that we have a social as well as a broad-based economic upheaval across the globe had a pretty large impact on the way we were also looking at these locations itself. What has happened because of the pandemic, the ongoing war, and other crises is that the talent and the labor market itself has shifted. The supply
Mhm.
chain itself has shifted. Believe it or not, more than 8 million people just in Ukraine have moved around, have been displaced from the available labor pool. The COVID lockdown completely locked up, as you know, China altogether, making organizations, companies globally look for talent in alternate locations. Another theme that has emerged is that the BRICS nation, that group, has actually become a very viable alternative to the G7. We call it now the emerging South, if you will, as you well
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
If you look at certain other locations, for example, if you look at the combine of Indonesia, Philippines, and the likes of an Iran, that group in itself, from a talent perspective, is a viable alternative and will fast displace some of the larger economies like Canada and the UK. Equally, large economies like Nigeria would become the third largest economy in the coming 10 to 12 years. So these are some thematic themes that are of extreme importance as we begin to look at locations and destinations of choice. And when we began to look at it, some interesting themes have appeared in 2023. Um, for the first time, we see a location like Brazil pop up. And now, after India, China, and Malaysia, Brazil is the number 4 most attractive destination. Why is that? Because it is near shore to the US. As we
Mhm.
said, near shore destinations, Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, are all very viable, and their importance has increased once there was a lockdown in locations like China, or the pandemic related issues came up. Equally, we find in the Global Services Location Index, 9 of the top 20 locations actually happen to be in Asia Pacific. And in Asia Pacific, some of the emerging destinations include the likes of Vietnam and Thailand as the China plus one option that are fast emerging. Another very interesting point, with the lockdown in a place like Hong Kong, Singapore has emerged as a very, very interesting destination, Achyuta. 24 positions it has jumped up in just 2023. Similarly, in Europe, UK has fast emerged and for the first time in the top 10 locations in the GSLI. No, we had not seen this before. It clearly shows that there is a hunger for a new kind of talent, with locations like UK and Singapore investing in digital talent and responding to the needs of Industry 4.0, generative AI, Web 3.0 kind of technologies. These locations have become far more pertinent and very interesting in the Global Services Location Index. So thematically, that is what we are seeing. Maybe one other theme that stood out for us, and again perhaps is not surprising, but the data is interesting, is Gen AI and Gen AI based impact on labor. And we find that due to generative AI, over the next 10 to 15 years, about 300 million jobs will be impacted. I'm not saying reduced, but will be impacted in some shape or form, moved around, replaced. And again, those locations that can cater to the emerging need become far more attractive. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the kind of themes we have touched upon on the GSLI and the kind of changes that we are seeing in the various rankings and ratings of the countries.
Right, Arjun, and I think you touched upon UK and Singapore as great examples of nearshoring getting more prominent. Is the same for Canada also, right? I think that also jumped 24 places this year, and you see Hungary, Japan, I think Portugal. These are also countries that really jumped up this year.
Yes, correct. That is absolutely true. And in each of these locations where there is opportunity also to get access to some other forms of soliciting talent, whether it is through digital natives, folks who might be doing multiple jobs during the course of a day, if you will, um, are very attractive options for getting talent. And because of the heightened connectivity in these locations, we find the gig worker is able to work across time zones, even from within a location itself. And those emerging models have also added to the availability of talent from these locations.
Agree. And I think a couple of years back, you added this new parameter, digital resonance, right? I mean, that's something which is, I mean, we have always looked at cost, we've always looked at people and overall business environment as key drivers, but the digital resonance is a new parameter that you've added, right?
Digital resonance is a new parameter that we added, Achyuta, and you're exactly right. I mean, as time has come to pass, in fact, we find that um, it's not just arbitrage or cost that would be the clear factor that decides the attractiveness of a location. In fact, those locations that are investing in creating the right kind of connectivity, the right kind of infrastructure from a overall availability of technology and IT infrastructure are going to be more in demand. Equally, those countries and locations that are building out their regulatory framework for responsible technology, for responsible AI, governance on topics that oversee, arenas like payment, arenas like blockchain, are going to be far more in demand. And so, each of these issues, including where we see academia and universities spending time in actually developing true digital talent and talent that is well versed, as I said in the past, with I4.0 technologies, are locations that become far more attractive. And each of these actually go to make what we deem is the digital resonance or the digital attractiveness of a location.
Thanks, Arjun. And I think it's a good time to segue into our next question on India has maintained some kind of a stranglehold on the top ranking in the GLSI index over the past so many years. Why is this so? I mean, what are the pillars around which India has retained leadership? And would you do a SWOT analysis of India? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? You talked about new parameters that you are including in your analysis. Where does India really stand over there? Um, uh, Please share your views on the country itself.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think over the last many years, in fact, since we started, India has always had the number one position, if you will, in terms of attractiveness, largely driven by the amazing skill pool, the deep effort that goes from universities and academic institutions to really churn out as an engine a talent pool that is highly scalable, but also very well versed, very skilled. And clearly, that advantage, when coupled with the cost advantage of India, makes it to be a very, very difficult competitive nation to displace. So, if you take those two in combination, the cost advantage, the talent pool, and the skill base, in a sense, it is a very, very powerful proposition that India has always had. It is also good to note that as time has passed, the overall tax regime, the availability of locations, including software parks, tier one cities maturing into tier two cities, becoming viable destinations, has continued to maintain India's attractiveness. And if you fast forward it now into the past year or two, even what the recent government as well as recent programs like the Prime Minister's Kaushal Vikas Yojana that I am familiar with, which I believe is tuned to upskill up to 4.7 million people in India. The recent data governance efforts in India all add up, in fact, to add to that same strengths of the country. And so the right kind of investments are being made to upskill and create the digital talent, but also create the policy and regulatory framework that is
Mhm.
very much required for a country to be attractive from a digital resonance score. Now, in terms of opportunities and threats, we should look on that side of the picture as well. Whenever we do evaluate India, perhaps there are two or three things that do stand out in terms of areas of opportunity. You could call it a weakness, or I would better term it as an area of opportunity. These would be things like ease of doing business and the associated score. Um, Things like what international bodies would rank and rate from a perspective of, let's say, what is deemed the corruption perception index. There is something called a corruption perception index and the rating of the country on it. Overall political risk, if you will. Available road port infrastructure, which has improved, but more can be done. These are all topics of even better ifs and or opportunities to continue to enhance the available both framework, available infrastructure, and the perception overall of the country itself.
No, I think very valid point, Arjun. In fact, if I look at your index and the top 10 countries, I think India scores the lowest when it comes to business environment in the top 10. I think India really comes to the top because of its financial attractiveness and the people piece. Even digital resilience to a certain extent is better than many of the competitors in
Yes.
Asia and other countries. But it really scores low in the business environment piece. And I think you've hit the nail right on the head by saying that that's one area that we really need to improve.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, thanks. So, going down to an outlook for locations, the importance of location as a driver for technology services. What would you recommend? What kind of an outlook do you present? What would you recommend? I mean, in case a country, a location wants to really become, a location of choice when it comes to technology, really wants to get into the top 10, top 5 rankings in your list. What kind of advice would you give to such countries? And would you really look at considering tweaking your model further, as you have been already tweaking it in the past few years as new drivers kind of emerge? So, any thoughts on the outlook and the any recommendations that you have?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And the way I like to answer it is the way I actually wrote it in the white paper as well. And it harkens back to one of the favored movies these days. And I'll say its name as Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yeah.
And for any location to emerge as a winner or a future winner in the GSLI, you really have to be everything, everywhere, all at once. And let me try and explain that. When we say everything, we mean that the location or the destination of choice really needs to be able to address every emerging technology disruption. Whether we see it today or don't see it today, it's around the corner. But the ability to perceive what is coming and get ready for it uh, is going to be one of the key factors for a location to be attractive. So everything,
Mhm.
get ready. Everywhere, which means how well are you digitally connected? If a location in Africa, we talked about Nigeria as an example. If a location in Latin America, if a location in Asia Pacific needs to become attractive, it needs to invest in its technology infrastructure and really ensure that it is fully connected, allowing its workers in far-flung areas, whether in tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, or villages, be able to get on the internet and make their skills available to clients and companies globally. So everywhere. And finally, all at once. All at once means, listen, we have a very large labor pool that is available in many locations. But that labor pool has to be regenerated. It has to be re-equipped on an ongoing basis, literally all at once. And so not only have you to be familiar with the technologies of the past, you have to be familiar with the technologies that are coming up in the future as well. So those locations that are really up to the challenge are those that will be everything, everywhere, all at once. We in the index will keep an eye out for this. In fact, the index has also become very dynamic over the years as we have added new metrics for measurement. In fact, we've talked about talent regeneration, but the fact of the matter is we added up to 7 new metrics just in 2023 in the way we look at the various locations. And we will continue to add these metrics to evaluate destinations of the future. We will add new locations. We will add new cities into the index as well. And this is a very dynamic evaluation as the world moves forward. So thank you for that question, but I hope that responds to what we continue to look at.
Sure. And thanks a ton, Arjun. This was a very insightful discussion on the importance of location for success of anybody's technology roadmap, and how choosing that is continuously evolving. And there are countries who are investing to achieve leadership in this space. Viewers, the report download link is in the description box below. Thank you for viewing and keep coming back for more. Subscribe, share, and hit the bell icon to stay notified as new videos drop. Thank you.
Thank you, Achyuta. Really appreciate it.